Top 10 movies that predicted the future. 10. The Truman Show predicts the popularity of reality TV.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
In 1998, Jim Carrey comedy The Truman Show depicts a world in which Truman Burbank unknowingly lives in a constructed reality TV show. Truman's every move is filmed and broadcast around the clock, watched voyeuristically by billions of people across the world. Fast forward to 2015 and reality TV, and what once seemed like a sci-fi dystopia is now staple programming. TV guides are filled with Kardashians and the watching eyes of Big Brother, delivering an eerie balance of reality and fantasy. 9. War Games predicts cyber warfare. This 1983 film stars Matthew Broderick as a young hacker who uses his computer to hack a United States military computer.
What does that mean?
World War III.
Almost starting a nuclear war from his bedroom, the film predicted the face of modern combat, where international warfare is conducted on computers, cyber attacks cause government data breaches, and hacking groups like Anonymous are international threats. 8. Videodrome predicts YouTube and violent viral films. The surreal horror film follows James Woods as Max, the CEO of a television station who begins to broadcast a TV show called Videodrome.
It's just torture and murder. No plot, no characters. Very, very realistic. I think it's what's next.
The program depicts the brutal torture and murder of anonymous victims and turns out to be the public face of a political movement. Fast forward to 2015 and videos of sex attacks and torture are only a click away, while terrorist group ISIS have become infamous for their brutal videos of beheadings and public executions. They film executioners as young as 10 years old in order to create violent viral content to encourage recruits and further their political aims. 7. Americathon predicts the rise of China. 1979 comedy is set 20 years in the future, in an America on the brink of financial ruin. The movie's futuristic premise is supposed to provide comic relief, but some of the film's predictions are ironically accurate. The film accurately foresaw the collapse of the USSR, Communist China embracing capitalism and becoming an economic superpower, and Vietnam emerging from war with America to become a major tourist attraction. 6. Wag the Dog predicts a presidential sex scandal and a convenient bombing. Political black comedy Wag the Dog follows political spin doctor Conrad Breen, played by Robert De Niro as he stages a war with Albania in order to distract the media from a presidential sex scandal. The film, which was released just a year before Bill Clinton's impeachment, successfully predicts the Monica Lewinsky affair. It also successfully predicted Bill Clinton's tactic to get his name out of the media. Just 3 days after Clinton admitted his affair, the US government bombed Afghanistan and Sudan, relegating the sex scandal to the background of the news. 5. Game of Death predicts the death of Brandon Lee. Bruce Lee's final film, the ominously titled Game of Death, tragically foreshadowed the death of his son Brandon Lee. In the movie, Lee plays an actor who fakes his own death after being shot on set during filming. But life mysteriously imitated art when 20 years later, his son Brandon Lee tragically died after being accidentally shot on set. He was filming the lead role in the Hollywood blockbuster The Crow. Also, honourable mentions, Steven Spielberg horror Poltergeist is thought to have predicted the death of actress Heather O'Rourke. Viewers noticed that the film randomly includes a prop poster that advertises the 1988 Super Bowl, despite the event being 6 years away. Fast forward to the 1988 Super Bowl, 12-year-old O'Rourke became violently ill, dying of a cardiac arrest the next day. Similarly, Christopher Reeve seemed to predict his own paralysis after starring in 1995 movie Above Suspicion, in which he plays a character who's confined to a wheelchair. 2 days after the film was released, Reeve himself became paralysed from the neck down after a horse riding accident. 4. Enemy of the State predicts the NSA scandal. Will Smith's spy thriller Enemy of the State was thought to be an exaggerated depiction of the NSA's capabilities. However, Edward Snowden's 2013 whistleblowing on their domestic and international surveillance programs proved that the deception of the NSA was probably more fact than fiction.
The National Security Agency conducts worldwide surveillance, fax, phones, satellite communication.
The only ones in the country, including the military, could possibly have anything like this.
Film critic John Patterson argued that the accurate predictions of the 1998 film Enemy of the State have even helped to accustom and pacify audiences to the reality of constantly being watched by the government. 3. Super Mario Bros., Terminator 2 and The Matrix predict 9/11. While the 1993 movie Super Mario Bros. Is a film that even star Bob Hoskins has admitted he'd rather forget, the internet won't let it die so quickly after one scene was identified as predicting the 9/11 attacks. Toward the end of the film, two parallel dimensions merge, causing the Twin Towers to disintegrate, while a plane mysteriously flies behind the towers, highly resembling the real destruction of the towers 8 years later. An overhead bridge in Terminator 2 and Neo's expired passport in The Matrix are also said to foreshadow the terrorist attack. 2. 2001: A Space Odyssey predicts space tourism and AI. When the film was released in 1968, film studio MGM was so confident about the film's release that they claimed everything in 2001: A Space Odyssey can happen within the next 3 decades, and most of the picture will happen by the beginning of the next millennium. Director Stanley Kubrick sought technical advice from over 50 organisations to make his futuristic sci-fi as plausible as possible. The film features gadgets that resemble smartphones and artificial robots with soothing voices, not too dissimilar from Apple's Siri.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
And all this predicted half a century ahead of time. 1. Back to the Future Part 2 predicts 3D cinema and video calls. 1989 cult classic Back to the Future Part 2 follows Marty McFly as he breaks the space-time continuum to travel to the future, all the way to 2015. Well, this day was bound to come eventually. So yes, while we don't all drive hovercars and wear double ties, Back to the Future 2 did a pretty amazing job at predicting the future. Most successfully, the film predicted flat-screen TVs, video calling, 3D films, and Hollywood's obsession with sequels. We also see the use of eye and fingerprint scanning and high-tech glasses not dissimilar to Google Glass. And every now and then, we even get a glimmer of hope.
Okay, yes, we are bored. We're all bored now. But has it ever occurred to you, Wally, that the process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money, and that all of this is much more dangerous than one thinks, and it's not just a question of individual survival, Wally, but that somebody who's bored is asleep, and somebody who's asleep will not say no? See, I keep meeting these people. I mean, just a few days ago, I met this man whom I greatly admire. He's a Swedish physicist, Gustav Bjornstrand, and he told me that he no longer watches television, he doesn't read newspapers, and he doesn't read magazines. He's completely cut them out of his life because he really does feel that we're living in some kind of Orwellian nightmare now, and that everything that you hear now contributes to turning you into a robot. And when I was at Findhorn, I met this extraordinary English tree expert who had devoted his life to saving trees. He just got back from Washington, lobbying to save the redwoods. He's 84 years old. He always travels with a backpack because he never knows where he's going to be tomorrow. And when I met him at Findhorn, he said to me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "New York." He said, "New York. Yes, that's a very interesting place. Do you know a lot of New Yorkers who keep talking about the fact that they want to leave but never do?" And I said, "Oh, yes." And he said, "Why do you think they don't leave?" I gave him different banal theories. He said, oh, I don't think it's that way at all. He said, I think that New York is the new model for the new concentration camp, where the camp has been built by the inmates themselves, and the inmates are the guards, and they have this pride in this thing they've built. They've built their own prison, and so they exist in a state of schizophrenia, where they are both guards and prisoners, and as a result, they no longer have, having been lobotomized, the capacity to leave the prison they've made, or to even see it as a prison. And then he went into his pocket and he took out a seed for a tree and he said, this is a pine tree. He put it in my hand and he said, escape before it's too late. See, actually for 2 or 3 years now, Chiquita and I have had this very unpleasant feeling that we really should get out. And we really should feel like Jews in Germany in the late 30s. Get out of here. Of course, the problem is where to go, because it seems quite obvious that the whole world is going in the same direction. See, I think it's quite possible that the 1960s represented the last burst of the human being before he was extinguished, and that this is the beginning of the rest of the future now, that from now on there'll simply be all these robots walking around, feeling nothing, thinking nothing, and there'll be nobody left almost to remind them that there once was a species called a human being, with feelings and thoughts, and that history and memory are right now being erased, and soon nobody will really remember that life existed on the planet.